Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you for your time and consideration today. Thank you for the organisers for putting on this conference, and Chrissy for running the stage for us. RareX is fundamentally a rare earth company, established on the thematic of the global megatrend of electrification. We've got an advancing project, which is technically Australia's largest undeveloped rare earth project in northern WA. We've got an exploration division which is growing globally, and we're doing all that with a very strong internal team that allows us to do it at very low cost and very efficiently. And that team really believe in this thematic, as a lot of us here do. The thematic is that we are in a real fundamental shift. The electrification of things, the global megatrend of green energy generation and green energy use. And that thematic was the basis of this company in 2019 when it was put together by our now chairman, Jeremy Robinson. And it was built on that thematic to get exposure to rare earths, because rare earths are so critical in this transition. And we've now seen that thematic play out in the vast amounts of money that are being invested in the green energy revolution, the vast amounts of government incentives being placed there, the huge amount of ambitious targets for net zero that governments are putting out there. And this is really having an effect on electric vehicles and wind turbines, which are the primary users and consumers of rare earths, where the rare earths sit in the magnets that go into the generators and the electric motors. And so that's really driven a very strong demand for these materials and these metals. And that is now being augmented by the defense sector. We've seen tremendous growth now globally in the West of defense industries. That's driving demand as well, but it's also introducing the strategic supply angle, which is very important in the rare earth space. By way of anecdote, NAIF in Australia will now no longer fund a rare earth project that has any of its product entering into the Chinese value chains. And on the other side, the Chinese labs will no longer support Western companies in developing process flow diagrams. And so there's a real divide occurring here, which means there's a very strategic element that overlays it. But augmented together, the demand is incredibly strong, which you can see from that graph. We're expecting 2 times increase in demand for rare earths by 2035, 3 times increase by 2050. So it's a very, very strong place to be in. But despite all that, the rare earth prices are incredibly low right now. And unfortunately, we are very leveraged to that rare earth price. And so you've seen our share price come down significantly. But the forecasts for the rare earth price are very good. Incentivization pricing is considered to be around about $100 a ton, so nearly 3 times the current pricing of rare earths. Forecasts in 3 years' time are about 3 times the current price of rare earths. And so we're very leveraged as a company to that. We're obviously also leveraged to increasing the definition on our projects, both our advanced development project in Cummins Range and on defining the portfolio of assets that we have. And we are, thirdly, leveraged very much towards our investments. Our investments are in 3 publicly listed companies, all in the critical minerals space, all of which have suffered similar declines in their share price. So we're very much getting set up for a return to pricing, and with it, a return to our share price. I think importantly to note is that the team that we have, which is reasonably large for a small company like ours, and the board have all bought in on market into this business. And so we're very, very vested to make something of it and to really put up the sails, so when the return in sentiment to our sector and to the metals occurs, we are ready to capture that. And we're doing that over 3 pillars, really. The first one is we're advancing Cummins Range. Technically, this is Australia's largest rare earth development that's not yet in production. It has a plethora of near-mine exploration targets, which we think is part of a cluster, so it's got growth potential in scale and in grade. And that is only going to have positive impacts on the net present value of that asset. The rare exploration pillar of the organization is focused on fostering a very good portfolio of exploration assets, particularly in Australia, where we've got quite a selection. But we're also expanding into Canada and into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which I shall go into during this presentation. And to tie that all together, the fact that this is possible is because we've fostered an in-house team, mentored by a very strong board. But I shall start with Cummins Range, which is our most advanced project. It is actually a rare earth and a phosphate project. It is not one or the other, and that makes it a little bit annoying when it comes to the comparisons. We were there for rare earths. We found phosphate in the process. The phosphate is in a very clean apatite mineral, which means it's a very suitable precursor material for the high purity phosphoric acid industry, which itself is a precursor to the lithium iron phosphate battery market, which is a massive growing sector in batteries for mobility and for grid scale batteries. So it really is quite a poetic angle to this particular project. It's underpinned by Australia's largest undeveloped resource, but practically it is Australia's third. If we look at the ton-grade curve at comparable metrics to our peer group, it's Australia's third at 44 million tonnes at 1%, but it also has the phosphate, and it's an absolute key part of this project. And you can see from the diagram on the right, those are the geophysics results that show that this asset sits there in a cluster. And the geologists are very keen to go out there and explore that, because anything that we can grow on that resource base has obviously upside to the project. But you can see from the graph as well, those little green triangles, the market capitalization of the business is very low relative to where it should be at this level of project definition. And we think from our analysis that is because of validation of the project. It has not yet been validated. And so that really is the fundamental focus for our team on this project. And we validate it three ways, really. The first way is we validate it through offtake, and that is our absolute primary focus at the moment. The Asia Pacific is a very, very good region for monazite offtake. Monazite is the mineral where our rare earth sits. There's monazite processing facilities, obviously in China, but also in India, in Vietnam, in Malaysia, in Australia itself, existing facilities and growing facilities. So it's a great place to do it. We're also working with government at another way of validating this project to support us in some of the key infrastructure. The key infrastructure for us being our connection to the Tanami Road and some port developments. And we're de-risking the project as well by working along that supply chain and locking away the supply chain with third parties using existing infrastructure, so we have access to a ship. So what we hope to see is the translation then of that validation into the look-through valuation from our net present value into our enterprise valuation. And we're very conscious of how we sit relative to other projects. So these graphs compare us, and these graphs will only get more confident with time as we define this project further. Our projected reserves are among the largest in our peer group for equivalent grades. Our annual output is looking very strong. It is looking like it's probably one of the most capitally efficient rare earth projects, largely driven by the fact we have the phosphate to monetize as well as the rare earths in the deposit, and therefore we can keep it relatively small and tight. And importantly for the supply chain of the product, we have one of the lowest radionucleotides in Australia. That means that licensing for product transport, for storage, and for the social and environmental impacts that go along with that, and the license to operate is considerably easier for us. Now, we define this project, and we are defining it further, but it is all anchored around offtake. Offtake is absolutely key. Offtake will drive the completion of the pre-feasibility studies, but we are continuing with the long lead items in parallel. We're doing a lot of work on the environmental baselines to go for approval very shortly. We've got a mining heritage agreement ready. All of our engineering work is ready to be deployed as soon as the offtake has come through. So we're gearing up to advance this project on the back of the key lever, which is offtake. And what that means now is that the team have some reserve capacity. We've fostered quite a good internal team, but we have some reserve capacity because offtake is a very specific focus and skill set. And we're applying that reserve capacity across the rare exploration side of the business, which is fostering our portfolio and curating a larger portfolio, starting in Australia, moving to Canada, and into Saudi Arabia for very specific and very similar reasons. The priority for us is in Australia. So outside of Cummins Range, the deposit we're advancing, the priority in our exploration portfolio is this thing called Red Dragon. It's in the East Yilgarn. It's 130 kilometers from Mount Weld. It's in a carbonatite district, and it is a massive geophysical anomaly sitting under the ground there, very close to existing infrastructure. Now, our geologists are incredibly enthusiastic about getting out there to find. This is something we cannot leave sitting in the portfolio without investigating, and so we're going after it with some government backing to do some drilling this year. That's a very exciting thing, and there's indications that not only could it be a large carbonatite. It's in the right districts, but there are indications of IOCG potential. We will have to see on this one, but it's incredibly exciting. Outside of Australia, we're moving into Canada. Now, we looked around the world really for the next place that we can apply our skills that are very synergistic to what we've learnt and the project that we're currently advancing. And Canada is actually, specifically the Ontario and Quebec, southern halves of those provinces are very attractive for us. The right kind of jurisdiction, lots of infrastructure, lots of government backing. But also we found a lot of very advanced projects which we think are thoroughly undervalued in that district. So we've been doing a lot of analysis with the team on what we can go for in that region. And during that process, we came upon an area that looks like it's been overlooked. And it is in a niobium carbonatite district at a very interesting intersection of some fault lines. And our analytical team looked at it and said we cannot not stake this ground. And so very recently we've gone in and made sure that we have claims over it. There's some very good indications that there are carbonatites. It's niobium focused, similar to the sort of Luni type deposit in the West Arunta. But we are planning now on the exploration program to go out into that region, while still looking for those advanced assets that are significantly undervalued in the current market. And Saudi Arabia, interestingly, comes into this mix as well. It's incredible geology in Saudi Arabia. It's got local markets, which is very important. Domestic markets and local regional markets. It's the same thematic of Australia because it has the Southeast Asian markets, Canada, which has the North American markets. We see Saudi as a real emerging province to suit its local domestic demand, but also the European markets. There's a massive industrial base there, which is the same thematic we have in Australia and in Canada. Incredible infrastructure, very cheap, reliable power, same as in Canada and not so much in Australia, I might add. And there's a huge move into the critical minerals sector underpinned by Vision 2030, which means there's a massive amount of financial backing. So for us, it's actually a very low risk, low cost way of getting into a very exciting, high potential emerging mining district. And so we're preparing to go in for our first bid in the next month or so. Look, we're able to do this because we have fostered the in-house team. And that has been very important, particularly during this down cycle, is to maintain a team that's very well functioning, it's well integrated, it's well diverse as a team of skills, very applicable to where we are, and to foster them because there's a lot of IP that comes with these types of projects and advancing them. We want to retain that, which means when the wind comes back into the sails, we're ready to launch with it. We're mentored by a very good board. Danny Gorman is the latest appointment to the board. He's a marketing and sales executive and coaching us on the offtake side. He used to be head of global marketing and sales for FMG and other very senior positions in Rio Tinto and Argyle Diamonds. Cameron Henry, he founded Primero and built that up to a 1,500-man engineering company that builds and operates processing plants. So that's obviously an incredible skill set to have on the board as by way of mentoring the team. And John Young, he brought Pilbara Minerals from an exploration company into an operating business. And then we're supported by Sean Hardcastle, who's our corporate lawyer, and the founder, Jeremy Robinson, as chairman, who's a very good corporate finance individual, all very invested in this business and backed up by the management team. The management team are very diverse in their skill sets, working incredibly well together. It's one of the reasons we want to foster them. But we've also developed their skills and brought in software into the business and brought in processes into our business. So we've got the skills to do a lot of this stuff internally, not using expensive consultants. That's actually meant we can consult out. So during the time when we have fluctuations in demand on our team, we can consult those services out, and we are doing so at the present moment. But we're not losing sight of RareX because that is the focus. So to summarize where we are at with RareX, Cummins Range is the more advanced project. Offtake is the focus. We have the approvals lined up, both the indigenous approvals and the environmental approvals lined up, ready to go. We've got the PFS ready to finish once the offtake component is sorted, and we've got that real exciting near mine growth opportunity. Then across rare exploration, the Red Dragon project in the East Yilgarn in Australia is an absolute focus for the exploration team. We're growing our position in Canada and hope to have some very interesting news coming out in the near future. And we're getting ready to bid on our first project in Saudi Arabia, which at the very least will give us a feel for the process and at the very best will give us access to probably a VMS deposit. Thank you very much. And I really encourage you actually to keep, we're very transparent in what we do, so I really encourage you to follow some of our platforms so you can see and engage with us and give us feedback as we go. Thank you.